Thank you so much, Paul, for being here on the Frequency of Love. I guess I discovered you by accident, or there are no accidents. I don't know what I was researching and came across you and your sessions, and then your books, and it's really been wonderful for me. So I just want to say thank you for bringing this to the world for us.
You're welcome. Thank you.
It's really extraordinary. I find the material in your books extraordinary, and what you're channeling. So why don't we, tell me how you got into this channeling, and how it strikes you now with this amazing information that these guides are telling you to tell people.
I'm sometimes a little reluctant about all of this work. It's nothing that I expected to be happening. I was in my 20s. I had studied a form of energy healing. I found that when I had my hands on people, I could hear things. So I was opening up as a clairaudient. And I began sitting in groups, mostly because the energy that would come through when I worked was so palpable, and I loved the energy. And I was channeling in those days, but I was channeling, I think, if anything, sort of directives of what information to call through. And I was into that. And it wasn't until about 5 years ago, I think, maybe less even, that I was doing a group one night, and my guides turned to somebody in the group and said, Paul's not going to believe what's coming through him until he sees it written down. And up until that point, I'd rarely recorded the sessions. I was, again, mostly interested in being in the energy of it. And the information to me was always sort of secondary. I've often said that the biggest challenge for me being a channel is that I'm the channel. If you were the channel, I could say, oh, well, she's saying this, it's coming through. But I really was always sort of questioning the fact that I was sort of the radio for this stuff. So I reluctantly began to record and typed it up. And I was amazed when I typed up the first session that I had delivered in session, a 5-page lecture that required no editing, and the teaching was very beautiful. Now, I'm a conscious channel, which means I hear what's being said, but I have this odd thing where I hear and then I whisper the words as they come, which is the direct transmission, and then I repeat the words again. So I'm hearing things in fragments with very little sense of what the entire build is. I hear phrase or sentence one on top of the other, but my job is in many ways to take the dictation.
Right.
So after I did that for a few weeks, the guides pretty much announced that they had a book to write and they would do it. And that's how the first book, I Am the Word, came through over 2.5 weeks of sittings. The Book of Love and Creation, which was channeled not long after I Am the Word, took, I think, 30 days of sessions. And there's a new book coming out in December called The Book of Knowing and Worth. And that took 25 sessions, and that was spread out over months, which was very different because my life has changed, my schedule's changed. The first 2 books were these very, very compressed experiences of channeling and sort of disappearing into the material and then coming out and looking at all the transcripts and then handing the unedited transcripts over to the editor, because the way that my guides work with me and the deal that we've sort of made is that I can't change anything. So I don't want to. So I can't make a sentence pretty if it doesn't come out pretty. And the books are not written. I'm not the author of these books.
Yeah.
I'm the channel. So it's a funny sort of contradiction, because I'm there for the books are coming out of my mouth. I feel that I'm participatory. I feel I'm a collaborator in some way because they reference me. They use my vocabulary. But I don't hold the level of knowing clearly that my guides do.
Well, and this is kind of maybe an aside, but I mean, you're a writer also. So how do you explain that they give you this information and it needs no editing whatsoever? It comes out just clearly and
It's the way it happens. I was a playwright. I was a playwright for years, and playwriting is a lot about hearing voices, and becoming the character. And I think in a funny way, I was being primed for this because I was used to the idea of being somebody else, you know? I mean, it wasn't any kind of leap for me. When I began to channel, the experience is very, very different from being a creative writer because I don't have an intent. I didn't know the title of the first or the second or the third book when I started. And people are sometimes astonished. I do workshops and people say, "What are you going to teach?" And I say, "I have no idea." You know, I say that I'm the guy that comes and I sit in the chair. You know, I show up and I sit in the chair. Now I walk. In the old days, and if you see some of the older interviews with me on YouTube, I'm sitting there rocking in the chair as I'm channeling, and that was the energy sort of trying to move through me. Now I'm on my feet, I'm all over the place, but I can't prepare. I wish I could sometimes, but I think if I could, it wouldn't be an authentic experience, you know? My job is to show up.
And you have to just completely trust and be open.
There's
to
nothing else to
this.
do, you know?
Who are these people?
They call themselves the guides. I'm happy with that. You know, they've talked about Christ consciousness as a level of alignment that they hold. I think when I was younger in this work, in my 30s, when I first began doing this work, I was somewhat attached to identity, you know, and names, you know. And I've said this in other interviews, but I felt sort of what was going on then was people were getting overly attached to the moniker that they would assign to the guide. So, you know, you go over here to the Michael people or the Gabriel people or the Pleiadian people, and it was like this strange cocktail party, and it was often contradictory. And I am much more interested, I think, personally in the information. I think the information is what needs to hold. And in the case of my guide's work, the vibration, the frequency, because the books themselves are attunements to this higher level of consciousness. And people can feel it. People read the book and they feel the energy moving through them. I mean, it's really quite amazing to me. But that's what the guide said would happen. So who are they? They're teachers. My favorite definition of who they are that they've given publicly is we are who you are becoming, which I like. Nice. So they're us as we evolve, you know, into our own mastery, into our own awareness of our own divine selves. Am I there yet? No, I'm not. Do I want to be there? Yes. Do I go kicking and screaming? Probably. You know, as I work with these teachings, they are integrating into my life, and that's not always graceful. You know, but I don't think I planned for this. You know, this wasn't something that I thought was going to happen to my life. So I work with the teachings as a student. I'm not
Yeah, so
a
you're
guru.
Sort of like us who are reading the books and going, my gosh.
Kind of, yeah.
Well, what is their agenda? I mean, why are we benefiting from yourself,
Yeah.
and then there's other people that are channeling.
I think they're here to tell us who we really are. They say this is who we really are. We are divine beings. We are aspects of the Creator, and we've forgotten that, or we've cut ourselves off from that, and consequently, we're creating and continue to create a reality of separation. And they want us to become aware of our own divine worth, or inherent worth. If you want to throw out the word divine, that's fine, but our own true worth. Because if I'm not holding a vision of my own worth, I can't hold that vision for you. If I don't claim my own divinity, I can't claim that for you. Or maybe I can, but I would do it in a way that would be deferential and giving my authority over. And they're not about gurus. I mean, you know, my work, in some ways, I feel, or the work that's coming through me, you know, doesn't appeal to people who want to be told what to do. The guides say, what do you want? Who do you think you are? What is the life that you're claiming? Because that's what you're going to get. And there's a lot of accountability that comes there, and that's not always fun when, you know, you have, or I have, an investment in feeling like a victim, or things are out of control and I can't do anything. You know, I can always change the way I think. My guides say, you know, as long as we have a choice, we're free.
Well, it's really extraordinary what they're saying. I mean, it's almost if somebody, you know, walks in the room. I mean, they're presenting to us an entirely different reality from the one which we've been living. So it can be a little hard, and it's also so incredibly fabulous.
Yeah.
I think part of it is hard to believe because it's like, oh my gosh, we're really free.
Yeah.
I mean, we're really free from what they're saying, and we're really divine. And I think we've thought of ourselves as being, you know, humans with limits and struggles, and everything has to be a struggle, and we're going to reach for the divine. So I'm wondering, why do we forget?
I don't know. I don't know. Why do we forget who we truly are? I think we live in a world, where we are told that we're small. We're told to adhere to forms and to structures. I was told that it was expected of me to go to college. I never thought that I could do something else. I'm actually happy I went. But, there were a lot of things that I did and still continue to do out of sheer adherence to form. The guides say we think that we're our history, and that as long as we think we're our history, we're going to continue to replicate that the frame that we hold, which is this is the way the world works and should run, and we've been running it a certain way for a very, very long time, we're continuing to re-impress that reality into the frame because it's what we expect. And what they're showing us is we have choice. Not only do we have choice, we actually have some sovereignty. We have the right to choose it. And if you don't know you have the right to choose something new, you're not going to do it. Why would you? I remember once I did a group it was upstate New York or something. It was a whole new group. It was like 99% women. And the guide said, you can all go leave your husbands today. And they went, oh! They were shocked. And then they started laughing because they realized they could. Now, they weren't telling anybody to go leave their husbands. They were reminding people that they have choices that they don't know that they have. If I don't like what I'm doing, I can get up and leave. But I don't think I can. I live in a world that tells me I can't, or that by a certain age I should have achieved certain things, or if I don't do certain things, maybe I'm not spiritual enough, or, or not successful. I mean, I bought into a lot of that stuff, And with the work that I'm doing now, in some ways, is in direct opposition to what I was, who I thought I was supposed to be.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah.
Well, it gets also back to, we want to control our reality.
Yeah.
So we think if we do things by these certain rules, that it'll work out a certain way, which it doesn't necessarily. I think in this idea of what your guides are saying, and being a divine being is becoming taking a walk in faith, for one, and creating our own reality. They talk about that we create our own reality. So how does that happen?
Well, we're doing it anyway. We're creating our own reality right now. I mean, I think my guides would say that everything that we see around us, we're in agreement with, because it wouldn't be there if we didn't agree with it at a certain level. And the guides say, what you agree with, you shake hands with. What you shake hands with, you hold. What you hold, you're in congruence with. That's part of your physical reality. You've made it manifest. So, I think that there's individual choice. The individual has choice. And I think that there's collective agreements that we go into as well, that are cultural or societal or historical paradigms that we really think we need. I mean, who says we need to have war? It's insane. Right. It's actually insane if you think about this. I mean, one of the guides talk a lot about in the Book of Love and Creation is that the belief that fear is there to keep us safe. I mean, that we need a bomb to keep us safe. I mean, they say, here you've got the means to kill everybody, and that's keeping you safe.
Right.
If you think about the logic there's something fairly off, but we've all poured all our energy into these things. Now, if there's not another way of thinking, maybe there's no point to this, but I think that there's always another way of thinking. Do we have the courage to go to another place of possibility and what might be, what reality might be? The guides have been talking recently a lot when they've been teaching about the kingdom. They say the kingdom, going, here we go again with this language, but they say, that the kingdom is the awareness of the presence of the Creator. That's it, in all things. It's the awareness of the divine in all things, and that it's here now. The kingdom's here now, but we have to be able to perceive it. We can't perceive the divine in everything if we don't acknowledge that it exists in ourselves. How is that possible? Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
It doesn't make any sense.
So it starts with our own perception of ourselves and self-love. right?
Yes, it does. And also, I mean, they attune people to a vibration that they work with to support them in this. You know, they do this in the book I Am the Word, which really is an energy activation. I mean, they say, you know, Paul can only be so many places, but the book itself is an attunement. So when they work through me and I go and do groups, they're attuning everybody. And that's for people to do with themselves. So they don't need me. And, you know, they've got the access to this level of vibration themselves. But I think the bottom line is it's about claiming it. You know, they say, you know, you are who you say you are. And you're really creating an identity through that, whatever that choice is. And, you know, claiming your divinity isn't claiming something that you're not. It's claiming what is eternally you. The fact that you are an attractive woman with blonde hair is transient. Do you know what I mean? You know, 25 years ago, you were a younger woman. Maybe you had blue hair. You know, I had lots of hair 20 years ago.
Right.
So, you know what I'm saying? But the true self, the divine self, is eternal. And I think they're asking us to re-acknowledge that and begin to operate from that place of knowing.
They also say, when you say, talking about this claim, I am a divine being, one is calling forth the truth, and the truth will itself to be known.
Huh.
So you're like, did they say that?
Yeah.
But that makes me think, and then when I'm doing the frequency of love and project and saying we're anchoring ourselves in this claim, is that by kind of shifting our weight into this place or into this knowledge of being a divine being, that more of how to operate in that field, what that field means, how it looks like from that place, more becomes revealed to us, and the more we can do it, like dressing in those clothes or whatever.
What do you mean by dressing in those clothes?
Acting as if even, or just, I don't know. I sort of feel like it like a weight by saying, this is what I'm going to believe, this is what I'm going to go with, even though I'm not there yet.
Well, I think whatever you believe is what you call to you, like it or not. So if I sort of believe, I sort of get the results back. Now, you know, I was raised sort of an atheist, you know, and I still struggle with some of this. There's a book coming out in November, which is actually a textbook on world religions, which I'm sort of very honored that I got a mention, and my work got a mention in, you know, by this guy, Jeff Kripal, who runs the, I think the Department of Religious Studies, I think at Rice University. But he talks about the woman who channeled A Course in Miracles, and, you know, she was raised an atheist, and she had, you know, reluctance with the teaching that was coming through her, I think, through much of that whole experience. So, you know, I don't know why I started saying this. I do too, you know, but the acting as if, I think acting as if is great. But what I think my guides would say, you know, and what they've been saying a lot is, when you make this claim and it's in your truth, your reality has to begin to shift to support that. You know, it has to. So we think that there's something that we're supposed to do. Do you know what I mean? I have to go run to the meditation class. I have to go take this thing or read that book. And there's nothing wrong with doing any of those things, I think. Maybe you'll be led, or anybody will be led in any different kind of way. But I think what they're saying is something probably a lot simpler, that when you move into alignment with the vibration of your own higher knowing, your world must begin to reflect that in one way or another. And you'll call to you the experiences that you need to bring you forward. So I know that that's been my experience through this. It's not always comfortable. It does involve some faith. I wouldn't want anybody to believe anything that I said just because I said it, and I wouldn't want anybody to believe anything that my guides say just because it was said. People have to have their own experience of this stuff. And one of the things that my guides do when they work is they bring through an energy that's pretty palpable. People get to feel it and have their own experience of this so that they can claim it for themselves. If you're not doing that, you're deferring your authority to somebody else. I'm not a very good New Ager. Somebody can wave a crystal over my head. I'll say, thanks a lot. Why don't you know? I mean, it may be amazing. I'm not discounting crystals. But I am saying, for me, I have to be able to claim something for myself in order to trust and to know. And I think that my guides understand that many of us are the same way. So, you know, the idea that we're all love, I have, you know, my guides dictated a whole book on love, you know, and I'm still questioning if I understand it. I understand the frequency of it. I understand what they say that it's not, which is a feeling or an emotion. They say that it's a vibration, it's a current, it's a state of consciousness, all these other kinds of things that we can move into alignment with. And then they say express as. You can be expressed as love. You can be expressed as your own divine self. One of the big teachings that I think has been coming through recently, which has helped me a bit to understand some of this, is that, they talk about the Christ in their books, and they talk about the Christ, and their definition of the Christ is the aspect of the Creator that can be realized in material form, the aspect of the divine that's seated in everybody. And they say that that aspect of the self is seeking realization as you. But they say there's a real big difference between, Bob as his divine self and the divine self as Bob. The divine self as Bob is the divine expressing through Bob. Bob as the divine self is still Bob sort of accessing something. And there's a difference,
So how do we access that difference? How do we become the divine self as...
Claim it, trust it, become it by choice is what I hear. I mean, some of it's about willingness, I think. I think it's also about letting go of who we were told we were. And I guess, and I'm not saying that I'm there yet at all, the claim it came from them, because I went, what do I say to that? And they say, claim it. I mean, I don't know. I think that I still am attached to who I think I'm supposed to be. And I still think that I'm my history. But I also think that I don't fully know, in spite of their having delivered thousands of pages of material through me, which they have now, that I'm really allowed this thing. And I think the thing that they say very often is we don't know we're allowed. We have been given permission, but we don't claim it. I mean, in the new book, they say, they do a whole chapter on the idea of welcome. And they say you ask for things and we deliver it, right to you, but you never open the door to claim it. You never welcome it into your own field. You never say, because you don't believe you can have it.
Well, like what's an example of that we might ask for and then not?
Oh, I can say, I want a relationship, which I've been complaining about for a while. But I think they would probably say, well, you probably don't because you don't have one, or you don't think you can really have one because you're not claiming it. But I think that they could bring the perfect relationship to me, but unless I'm open to receiving it and believe that I'm worthy of it, it's not going to be in my allowed field. I'm not going to be able to hold. It's like those folks that win the lottery and they win all that money and then it's gone in a year. You know what I mean? Their consciousness can't hold that level of prosperity. It hasn't been earned. Do you understand?
Yes. Well, and it does seem it's sort of the integration of the human and divine, where I think a lot of us get a bit, like, how is this going to work?
Yeah.
Because you don't want to be just dreaming and thinking, oh, isn't this a wonderful idea? But and a lot of people are, how am I going to make money? Or how am I going to, it's still we're sort of half and half, maybe. Half in the struggle and half in the, So I think what your guides were saying, just claim it. I say, just do it and see what happens. Is kind of how I feel like, just claim it.
That's kind of this claiming and doing. I don't know if you can do something without claiming it first.
Yeah.
So it's kind of the same thing. The idea of setting an intention, which they're very big on, simply means that you're bringing the energy to bear. You're bringing the action of the divine when they say, I am word through this intention, which is one of the ways they claim, divine action. You're bringing the divine frequency to support you in that claim, to shift the relationship to whatever it is you're working with. That sounds abstract, but it's a little complicated just to sort of lay it out.
Well, I want to talk about frequency and vibration because we've been using that a lot, and that's something that I'm a little unclear on.
Me too.
So, what does it mean to raise our vibration?
Well, I think it means to lift your consciousness to above the level of low energy or low frequency. So I'm staying in a hotel, we're in a hotel, and I had people clomping around on the ceiling last night at 4 a.m, and I was really angry. I claimed my anger right and left, and my energy was pretty much in the gutter, at a certain point, and I know it. And, when my energy's at that place, I call to me experiences of like vibration. And you all know what it's like. If you're having a bad day and you walk around, everything looks bad. It just becomes the frame that you hold. When I move into an awareness of divine order, or the action of the divine, or my own divine worth, or the divine worth and the people making all that noise upstairs, I move into another relationship with it. And consequently, my reality shifts. My experience of vibration isn't an intellectual one. So when I use that term, I'm mostly talking about what I feel energetically when I work. And I know it. So I can tune into somebody, because I have a practice as a psychic. I can tune into somebody and I can feel where they're coming from and what level they're operating at. And I could say vibrating at, but it pretty much means where they're coming from at a level of consciousness. I believe that your consciousness is your vibration, and you're probably vibrating at a certain point depending on where you are in your own awareness. So that's my understanding of it. But I was reading somebody the other day and they were way above me, because I tuned into them and I went, wow. They were really high. It was wonderful. It was wonderful for me to feel, but it also showed me that I get to go higher too.
Well, and how do we get ourselves in that situation? And especially if you're in an intense environment that's maybe a little more permanent than even somebody clumping on your ceiling.
Yeah, I think we have to take some responsibility for the situation. I moved to another room, so I took responsibility. I decided I wanted to go to sleep and I didn't want to suffer, and I ended up sleeping very well. I took an action on my own behalf because I decided that was something that I was allowed to do. And then I felt better, and I woke up not angry. If I'd stayed in the room, I would have had a rougher day today, and I knew that. But how do we change I think we have to realize that we have choice. I think that that's a big one. I think what my guides have said before is that if there's something that's not working in your life, you have to ask yourself what payback you're getting from it. Because very often what we're complaining about is something that gives us something that we think we need. So for example, my relationships never work out, if that's the belief that I hold. And then I get to have that belief validated every time a relationship doesn't work out, and that proves me right. Or maybe it proves my mother right, or my father right, or my ex right, or whoever said something that I held on to, that I've then supported in terms of my agreement with my whole reality. So I think some of it's choice. How do you shift your vibration? My guides say we're all radios. We're all radios, and we're all vibrating and sending out a broadcast. And that you can really turn the dial. You can tune the dial up. In the workshops, they often have everybody just sit there and shift their frequency, and you can feel the difference. Once you're able to feel your own energy, which is a big help, to be able to feel your own energy field and know that you've got one. Because knowing that you are more than the physical body is a huge step for people. It was a huge step for me. I mean, that's what changed everything. When I could start to feel energy and see things around people, I was like, what the hell? Because, it turned my life inside out in a lot of ways, because I thought that, everything around me was permanent. And, my guides say none of it's going to be here in 100 years anyway. All the stuff that we value so much, it's not going to be there for us. We're not going to be there for it.
Yeah. So are we more energetic than we are these physical bodies that we're...
I have no idea. I would assume so, yeah. I would assume so. I think that the spiritual self is the eternal self, and this is what we walk around with to learn through, to have an experience. I don't think there's anything wrong with the body at all. I think the body is a great vehicle. It's a great way to learn. It's what we chose to come in and have this experience through. But is that all there is to us? Absolutely not. And I know that because I couldn't do some of what I do if that were the case. I mean, I can tune into your sister in Des Moines and I can feel her energy field, and I can often begin to resemble her, which shows me that I'm not just this. There's an aspect of me that can travel or meet her, which doesn't work. It took me, 4 hours to get to Boulder from New York. It takes me a second to get to Des Moines into your sister's energy field. So there's a whole other level of engagement that I don't understand. I imagine that the physicists do. I had a physicist tell me once that I wasn't going anywhere but in. You know, when I thought if I was reading somebody in China, I was going to China,
Yeah.
and they say you don't have to go to China. You're just really. It's almost like you just sort of step in through another door,
Wow.
into that reality. You know, so I was still thinking in terms of physical distance,
Right.
and because that's the paradigm that I knew. It's not the case.
Well, how much are we influencing one another, like the people in this room and our energy fields and what's going on with each of us? More than we're aware of,
A
right?
whole lot more. There's discussions happening all the time. You know, you think somebody's attractive, you don't like the way they look. I mean, there's all that stuff that's always sort of going on energetically. But the work that my guides do has a lot to do with co-resonance. So they lift the vibration of people through these attunements that they offer, which is really simple. They're claims. Anybody can do it. You don't need me. You don't need to pay a cent. It's just claim it. You know, it's yours. You know, and they use this energy. They call the word is the energy that they work with, and they say the word is the energy of God or the Creator in action. That's their definition. But when they have people working with that vibration, and they say, "I am word through my body," word I am word, which they say aligns the physical being. I am word through my vibration, word I am word, which aligns the energy field or the aura. And I am word through my knowing of myself as word, which they say claims the identity, your true identity, outside of the personality structure. You're actually attuning your vibration. And when one person does that, they actually can do it for everybody else. So if I start vibrating up here, you can lift everybody to you. You know what I mean? And at a certain level, I think what we're doing is we're giving one another permission to do this. You know, I didn't know that I could do, when I was in my early 30s, I took my first healing class with this very, very gifted teacher. And she, you know, she was an old Irish lady, and she just said, everybody in this room ask for one thing and you're going to get it. And I asked for something, and I felt a current of energy go through my body like I had never known possible. And it was real. And I was like, holy crap. But I also knew that if she could do that, it could be done. She gave me permission to move beyond who I thought I could be. And we live in a world right now where I think there are people that are enormously gifted. You know, I'm an academic. I teach college. I run a graduate program. I have another life that's a little more conventional. And I have people writing me all the time and say, you know, I'm a tenured professor and I'm a clairvoyant. And, you know, I'm an attorney and I'm a clairsentient. And these people aren't in full conversation because nobody's allowed them to be fully. And when it becomes part of a larger conversation, we all get to share this stuff because I don't think I'm all that special. I really, really don't.
Well, how many of us need to begin to allow this to happen and have these kind of conversations in order to really make a difference?
Well, I think everybody who wants to. Do you know what I mean? I think if you're called to it, have the conversation. You know, I find it amusing right now and pleasurable that, you know, this book that was dictated in this apartment that I was living in Manhattan, you know, whatever it was 5 years ago, you know, as an experiment, you know, the guide said, give us 2 weeks, we'll dictate a book. And I had nothing to lose. That book has found its way all over the world.
Right.
You know, and that people are engaging with it, you know, and having their own experiences with the energy and the teaching, which are very personal. I think that's kind of amazing, that it can be catalytic.
Yeah.
So but I think what I very much like is that the people that are finding the books are the people that seem to need them at the right time. You know, and then they often share them with other people, which I think is really kind of wild and lovely.
But if we do want to have an influence on whether or not we go to war, do you think that one day we will be able to have that kind of an influence?
I think so. This is what I have to believe right now. Yeah. I think if we were doomed as a species, I don't know why the guides would bother coming through trying to teach us something different. And they say that pretty consistently. Right. And in the new book, they come right out and say it, you know. I mean, you all can change, but you have to know that you can. And you can, and here's a way to begin it. And it's called the Book of Knowing and Worth, which is the new one. And it's very much speaking to the innate worth of all human beings. And if you know the person next to you is also a divine being, you're not going to go and kill him. Do you understand that? You're just not going to. If you know the person beside you is your brother, regardless of what they have done, what you think they have done, how you would like to see him punished, what their religion is, if you just know that there's still an aspect of the Creator here and now, just as you are, having their own experience of being alive in this screwy school we've all agreed to come to, you're not going to kill him. You're not going to war with him. Why would you? You know what I mean? It's a paradigm of separation. That's what we're agreeing with, and fear is all about separation. If I think you can hurt me, I'm going to build a fence. And if I think you can climb over the fence, I'm going to electrify the fence. And if I don't think the fence is going to work, I'm going to get a bomb and throw it over the wall. And that's how we live, and that's fear. And fear is being perpetuated and foisted on us daily.
Yes, it is.
I'm as vulnerable to it as anybody else. However, what I have learned to do, much more so than I used to, is something that my guides teach, and I believe firmly. And they say, when you take an action based in fear, you create more fear. It's always the case. And they say, look back at your own lives and look at a choice that you made because you were frightened, and you'll see that you got a whole bunch more fear. It sets a trajectory. When you take an action in love, you send out a whole different frequency. And I believe that that's what you get back as well.
It's fascinating to me that fear has so much control. Why do you think that is?
I don't know. I truly don't know. I mean, I think that it has control, but I think it's a way that we are controlled as well. And I think that, some of it has to do, some of it's probably race mind, I don't think there's anything wrong with running from a grizzly bear, if you're at a campsite. I think that's self-preservation. You're running for your life. You're running to save yourself. I think that there's probably something very different than surrounding your property with bear traps because you think somebody might come through. That's my hunch. So I think, I don't know why so much fear. I think that, so it's not to say that, fear can't be a useful tool, I suppose, in some ways. I know now, this is the difference. I was going to use an example, and I'm going to take back what I just said. I don't think it's useful. I was going to use the old example of, like you don't take out the bread from the toaster with a fork. You know what I mean? You just don't do it. You'll electrocute yourself. Now, but that's common sense, and that's also discernment. You don't have to be frightened of electricity. You know what I mean? You don't have to be frightened of a bear. You don't have to be frightened of somebody who's different than you unless somebody tells you you should be. And people say, you should be frightened of that kind of person. You should be frightened of this or that, or this disease or that thing, and go buy the drugs, or, you should be frightened of going to hell, so go to the church, or whatever. So we're all being controlled, and we say, okay, because it's a lot easier than realizing we don't have to.
Well, that's part of what we need to wake up to and see that this is what's going on and has been going on.
I agree.
So I want to talk to you about love, because that's the main gig, really. Even according to your guides, they basically say that is the goal, to embody love and for us to love ourselves, see the world with the eyes of love, and that we can love as we will have the ability to love as God does. So, and they talk about getting in the frequency of love. So we don't understand love, I don't think, and also even in your book it says we've made it small, which totally I agree. So what's a better way to understand love?
Oh, I don't know what a better way to understand love is. I think to understand perhaps what love isn't is a start. Love isn't, I don't think, an emotion. I don't think it's a greeting card. These are the things that they say. It's not, I love those shoes. Those are great shoes. I would love to have those shoes. We misuse the language, and we've turned it into something else. What is love? The action of the Creator, I think. I think love is the action of the Creator, or an action of the Creator, I think might be another way perhaps to look at it. I think they also probably would say, and I'm guessing here, and I'm not channeling at the moment, so I'm going to go That's not right. I just heard, no, it's not right. What I was going to say, they just corrected me, so I'm not going to say what I thought sounded so
glad they're
intelligent.
here.
Well, they're always sort of around. It's
Yeah.
just sort of a level of access,
Yeah,
you know, and my own clarity to the work.
Well, they can love, and this is sort of what I was going to start later, but it's still a fascinating question to me. Can love transform or realign structure?
Yes, as far as I know, absolutely.
How is that possible?
Well, it depends. Well, we're using language that's a little amorphous. Now, I'm a teacher. I'm a college teacher, and I love what I do. Actually, I love the students I get to work with, and I feel something kind of amazing happens. But what I do as a teacher is I see the potential in the student. I see what they can be realized as. And I think that is an act of love. I'm not telling them who they should be. I see who they can be in their highest potential. And then I watch them go there. They go there. But I hold the vision for them, which I think is an act of love. When my guides are teaching, they have people look at each other and see them without judgment, or they see them with every mistake they've ever made and still see them as worthy of love. And you should see what happens in the room. I mean, people are shifting like crazy because we don't believe we're worthy of this stuff. I have issues still myself, so it's a touchy subject, and the guides call me on it all the time. You know, my own belief in my worthiness of being loved. The guides say, and they've said it a number of times, I think it might be in the new book too, but they say something to the effect of, if everybody on this planet believed, or no, they say knew, and that's the important word. Belief and knowing, I think, are different things. If everybody on this planet knew for a moment that they were loved, the whole world would change, just for a moment. Wow. Everybody would change, the whole thing would change. But we don't know that. And we don't know that because we don't know that we're worthy of it. We don't think we're worthy of it because we've been taught, we've bought into a lot of systems of thinking. And I think part of what they're teaching is that we are, regardless of what we think about ourselves, you know, regardless of what we have been taught, we're always creating a reality in accordance with our worth. And here's the example they use. If you've got $5 and you go to a restaurant, you only expect to get $5 worth of food. You don't expect to get more. So your life is like that. Everybody's life is like that. If I don't believe I can be receiving of love beyond a certain point, or if I'm too old to find somebody who's going to want to be with me, or if I don't have this or that criteria, you know, if I have all these reasons why I cannot be loved, I've created a very little frame for myself to have that engagement with. You understand this?
Right.
And I get what I expect.
Yes, and I think there's many ways to block the flow. It sounds to me like what it is basically is if we can kind of get out of our own way and allow this love to flow through us. But not thinking ourselves are worthy is almost like we create a small, kind of a small container.
Yeah, exactly right.
They also say that if we love one another, if we can see each other through the eyes of love, you could sit in a park and look at one another and accept each other unconditionally, that our lives would transform.
And it's true.
Radically.
It's true. And it doesn't take more than an afternoon in the park to do it. Really. I mean, it's a choice. It really is a choice. You know, we perceive, one of the things they've been talking about recently, which I think is really interesting, when I look at you, I'm actually really looking at myself, because I'm bringing to my vision of you all of my own historical information about what you must be like, how you must be raised, how you must live, what you must like for dinner. Anything that I want to project onto you, I'm doing onto you, and it's a load of junk. None of it has anything to do with really anything. When you move beyond all that stuff and you can truly see the divine worth of the person before you, which is really they have a right to be here, just as you do. And you don't have to know why they came here or what they came here to learn, because we're judging people based on our own assumptions of what things should look like. You know, how do I know that the guy begging on the street corner isn't having a high experience of this lifetime? I assume something must have gone terribly wrong. How do I know? I don't know that. I'm assuming a whole lot. Do you know what I mean? I assume that because somebody is in a position of power, they have wisdom. Why would I assume that based on the level of, craziness that we've seen politically? You know what I mean? Why would I assume
Good
that?
point.
But these are these assumptions that we all go into agreement with. So the idea of sitting in the park or sitting in a coffee shop or sitting opposite somebody else and seeing somebody in their own worth, or seeing the divine worth, or just the divine, the light if you want, in everybody else, can be deeply transformational, and you'll feel your own vibration shift. Last night I was, hearing the upstairs neighbors clomp around, and I was getting nastier and nastier, and the last thing I was seeing was the divine. I was seeing, go up there and bang on the door and wake them all up. Do you know what I mean? And that would have been my experience of them. I have other choices, and the guides say we always have another choice to think a new thought, if nothing else. Even if I'm tied up and bound, I can still think another thought. I have that much freedom. And they do say as long as we have the choice to think, we're free.
I've always wondered if you could see love, what would it look like? Or in other words, when you are loving another person, or collectively or as individually, what's happening? Or seeing someone through the eyes of love?
Well, you've got to know what that's like to do it, and it's astonishing to do it. I mean, to see somebody with the eyes of love, and I think I'm sure mothers probably can do it with their kids, or lovers can do it, but honestly, it's a whole other way of perceiving. And you're not operating with judgment or any presupposition, and consciously you're shifting your whole awareness to their beauty, I would say. And I don't mean physical beauty, I mean the beauty of their being. It's a remarkable experience. I can't say what it looks like. I know what it's like to see it, but when I look but I'm the one that's changed by that. And I believe the one being witnessed is also being changed by that. People know when they're loved. You know what I mean? They know. You know. You know when you're loved. You know when you're judged. It's a very, very easy thing to see and to feel. But the doing of it and the being of it, I think, is something we're all capable of. Why wouldn't we be?
So it's a choice and an action, but something beyond, not just intellectual.
I think it's informed by something else. I don't think it's an intellectual thing. I really don't. My intellectual thing can say, oh, she'd be really pretty if she did this or that, or if she wore this or that. That has nothing to do with anything. But when I've been able to sort of reach that level of awareness, I just know that whoever I'm looking at is right where they're supposed to be, given whatever information that they've ever had. And I know that they're amazing, I know it. I know it because I can't not know it. I mean, it's like that's all there is, It's hard to describe.
Yeah. Well, and your guides say that we're connected to that we all have a big well of love within us. I mean, would that be like our connection to the divine, perhaps? That's how divine kind of comes.
I'm asking. Yeah, exactly right. Yeah. I mean, I've heard it said by others. God loves through us. We don't love God or Source or whatever you want to call it. The universe loves through us, and maybe that's so.
So if we want to cooperate with the divine or be our divine being, it would really be allowing that to flow through us or to use us.
That sounds right to me.
Is time of the essence? Is there something about now that
there
we're getting
is.
this information?
There is. I mean, I just know what they've said. And they said, we're at a time of reckoning. Mankind is at a time of having to, and they say a reckoning is a facing of. And to reckon with something is to face it. And that we're at a time of facing all of our creations. And what they say, whatever we've created in fear is going to have to be attended to in one way or another. We have choices about that.
So if we really sort of don't choose to become our true nature, become our divine being, then we may be faced with something different, or like you say, reckoning maybe.
I don't think that's. I
maybe
mean, I don't think that's. My guides don't. They don't promote fear, and they don't make predictions about that stuff. But I think it's obvious. I think it's just obvious. Look around you, And so, I think we have the opportunity to change. And, this is a time, they say, for whatever reasons, and I don't know, they say that the availability to change is here in a way that it's never been. And, a lot of other people say this. I don't read other channeled material. I just don't. I try not to, actually. I don't know what other people say. But I hear from others that many people are saying the same kind of thing, that this really is a time of new possibilities for mankind. But we have to attend to those possibilities, and we have choice. We've been gifted with free will. My guides don't say, they can't make us do anything. They can't make me do anything. I've often said they'll let me walk into traffic unless I say, is this a good time to cross the street? And then they might say, not wise. Do you know what I mean? They're not going to tell me what to do. They're not allowed. They don't override free will. We've been gifted with free will. What we do with it is up to us. And what do we want to be acting on? Do we want to be acting on the old paradigms that, screwed it all up to begin with, or operating on a new possibility? And honestly, the possibilities they're talking about are not new. They've been around for thousands of years. Love thy neighbor is not a new teaching. As ye measure, so shall ye meet, which means essentially, what you put out, you're going to get back, is not a new teaching.
Right. As I've looked into this, I realized if we would just practice the spiritual principles that we've learned from such a long time ago and just actually do those and look at them as substantive.
Yeah.
That's what we're to be doing. But they do talk about the planet becoming a world of light, the possibility of that, sort of the planet itself raising its own vibration, which is a fascinating concept.
I don't remember if they said it, they said it.
Okay. Well, I'm just going to ask you one last question, and this, like my own personal question about my Frequency of Love project, which I explained briefly earlier, which is a website that says we are divine beings, illuminated beings of light, and love is our chief operating system. And it's a way, it's to kind of create this claim like an anchor, and that we have conversations around that. I have a round table and some interviews, and it's sort of so anybody can come to this place, get information, or just encouragement. And I sort of feel like we're a reality show. We want to be spiritual beings. So how do we, look at the world, or how do we, what are some of the practices? A lot of what you've talked about is really just choosing and practicing. So the question is, and I don't know what you can offer an opinion, or maybe I'll have to ask your guides later, but is that useful? Is that even useful to people, or how could it better be useful to people?
Well, I mean, what I hear is that to give people permission to be who they are is a great gift. And I mean, I think if you're creating an opportunity for that level of conversation, that's enormously useful. I get that people need to be taught that they can have the lives that they want. They can be themselves in a fuller way. That they have choices to make that they don't know, that they can make. And I think if you can create the space for these conversations, or this conversation, you're doing a form of service. I think people are willing to hear things that they weren't willing to hear a short time ago. And I think that that's hopeful.
Right.
I mean, I happen to be a channeler. That's part of the way that I work. Somebody else may be giving a similar teaching in a way that can reach people that are not going to want to hear a channeler because they have opinions about channeling, and I respect that. I used to have enormous opinions about channeling. I didn't think I believed in it, but now I do it, and I don't understand it, but I'm fascinated by the experience of it because people seem to be helped by it, and I've been helped by it as well. So how you bring the message out may be how it needs to be heard by who needs to hear it.
Right.
So congratulations for doing that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.